Knightline is brought to you by the Dever Team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
This is for the busted hearts. This is for the question marks. This is for the outcast soul, lost control, no one knows. Sing it for the can't go back. Sing it for the broken past. Sing it for the just found out. Life is now upside down. If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand. We're gonna make it through this hand in hand. And if we fall, we will fall together.
Alrighty. Hello, Nine Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 240, that is. Joining me, as always, Roger KnightBengal. How you doing,
Hello,
Roger?
hello.
And then
I'm
also,
doing well.
also joining us here for this week is John Swift. You may know his name, remember him from way back. We used to have him on quite a bit doing by the number, or what was it?
Crunching the numbers.
Crunching the numbers,
Yeah.
That's right. So John Swift, welcome. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I think it's probably been about 225 episodes, but man, it's great to see where you guys have come.
It's been a long time. So I don't know if it's been that long, but it's been a while. So welcome. You're in the studio with me. Roger, where are you at this week? You're in Nashville?
I am. I'm right beside Vanderbilt University in a hotel overlooking their medical plaza right now.
All right. So cool. What do we got in store, Roger? We have a lot to talk about.
Well, on this week's show, oh, what could have been? Are you jumping off of the bridge yet? Pole position, by the numbers, or not? Roger's 5-alarm hot take, Doused, inside the huddle with Kyle Israel, real talk, making the grade, and your questions in Ask Knightline.
All right, well, we have a ton to talk about, obviously. Not a lot of good stuff to talk about, some good stuff to talk about, but a lot of not so good stuff. 50-49 lost to Memphis. Memphis, of all people.
Another streak goes down, Andrew.
Yeah, I guess that was the streak against Memphis. They hadn't beat us since like 1990 or something like that.
30 years they had not beaten us. So we have managed to, I think, create a streak to end other streaks.
Not good. Well, I think that the defense was pretty much non-existent, and that kind of did it. They showed up in the first, was it the first series where we got the ball back, a turnover there in the first series, or the second series.
Yeah, but the first
like
half
that?
they didn't do too bad. They forced them to turn the ball over several times, not just a forced turnover, but actually on downs. So they did fairly well in the first half, which is why I was so surprised about the second half.
Yeah, well, I was ready for second half Randy to come out, and second half Randy did not show up. He was first half Randy this week. So let's get into these clips real quick. Do you want to go ahead and do that, or do we want to talk any more about it?
We can talk about it afterwards. The biggest thing for me from the weekend, and I just want to put these two thoughts out there. One, How bad do you feel for Dylan Gabriel, who had a career night and ended up with a loss?
Yeah, 601 yards, I think it was, of passing, which is absolutely crazy. And then he ran for another 64 and a touchdown. So 6 touchdowns he was responsible for. And we lose. We had 798 yards of offense, and we lose. Could
you imagine that during the George O'Leary years? Oh, my God.
Here's check this out. Here's what Josh Heupel had to say on that exact question. 790 yards and a loss. Here's what he had to say.
I don't care. We talked about it in the locker room. Be 2-0, be 50-49. You just want to be on the right side of it. The motto in our building is B+1. And it's everybody in it together all of the time. Don't matter what the scoreboard says. You got to be +1. It's a team game.
I don't care is what he said. And I know there's more people this week calling for Josh Heupel's job, blah, 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 than there has been even from last week. 2 losses in a row, though. It was a big deal. It's definitely a big deal. I do not think that this one is solely rests on Josh Heupel's back, though.
I don't think it rests on his back at all. Honestly, I mean, this is Randy Shannon. Josh Heupel's responsible for the offense. He calls the plays. We all know that Danny White hired
he's the head coach.
Randy. But he ended up hiring Randy Shannon separately and basically told him to do that. I still have the opinion that dynamic between the two is not a traditional head coach. I think the understanding is, Josh, you go coach the offense. Randy will handle the defense. And then we'll go from there. So to me, what you saw a little bit more of this week was, hey, what's up with this defensive coordinator? Do we need to be calling for his job? And I don't think that's the case, but that's more of what you're starting to see now. And I don't think enough people understand the dynamic between the two of them because it's not traditional.
Well, here's what Josh Heupel says on how the D can improve.
I believe in our defensive staff. I do, man. They done a great job for a long time. They played coach with great passion and energy. I think, you've heard me say a lot that, like offensive football is, 11 guys operating as one. Same thing on the defense. There's a lot of guys that played with great effort and technique tonight, did a lot of really good things. We got to ensure some things. The quarterback got out of the pocket here late in the ball game and was able to use his feet a bunch. But we got some young guys that were playing a lot of minutes too. I think there were 3 freshmen starting, at the beginning of the ball game here. Guys got to grow up. They got to continue to fight and prepare the right way and put themselves in a better position.
Okay, so he loves his defensive staff, he says right there. None of them no coaches are going anywhere right now, especially. Maybe after the season they'll make some changes. Maybe they won't. But right now, nobody's going anywhere, so we're dealing with what we're dealing with. And I think that they can get this together, obviously. I believe in this team enough that they can get this together and not let this happen, hopefully not three times in a row. That would be horrible. We talk a little bit about Kyle Israel about that later. John, what do you have anything to say about especially that clip or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the defense is the group we have is the group we have. So we lost Nate Evans, which is a big part of that defense last year. Obviously, Bam Moore coming back from an injury still isn't available. Tate Gowan opted out. So we're a little lightheaded, but we also just have the talent we have. And what I see a lot of is up front and in the linebacker positions, we just aren't getting it done. Linebackers are losing track of receiver streaking across, just kind of a step late. Just don't have a lot of athleticism, and that's costing us. Up front, we're stunning and twisting a lot, not getting a ton of pressure, and a lot of times to the quarterback, we're not able to contain when a quarterback sees man coverage and is running forward. And those linebackers just really, to me, have been a really big disappointment this year. They're just not really able to stop the run or cover. So it's putting a lot of pressure on that secondary, which is very young, very inexperienced. And I think I saw them at times playing in decent position, but they just aren't making plays. And to me, it's probably mostly a confidence thing. They're getting beat a few times, and it's tough. You're out there, the lights are on, and it's big time football.
Absolutely. Well, we did not hold them very well. 217 rushing yards we gave up, 45 carries for 217 they had. We had 47 carries for 197 on them. So they didn't, we let them run all right. So that did not help anything at all. All right, the next clip I got here is how does Josh Heupel get the team motivated after this?
We have a bunch of competitors in that room, and I believe that we do. As a competitor, there's a pride factor in everything that you do every day. There's certainly a pride factor on game day, and our kids prepared for this one extremely hard. Didn't go our way here at the end, so move on and get ready for the next one. Learn the lessons that you need to learn and keep going.
All righty, learn the lessons you need to learn and keep going. One lesson that they did learn, obviously, this week was the lack of offensive line penalties, especially. They got that figured out, and that means a lot, to be honest with you. And that's one of those things that we weren't sure. Like, how are you going to fix this and fix it? Like, so there's none of that. There was none of it. So let's hear what he had to say about that.
We improved. We took coaching. We got better. I'm proud of that. Our kids have had that around them or been hearing about it for 2.5, 3 weeks here, and the ability to make a change, get better. It helped us stay in rhythm, helped us play with tempo, helped us play ahead of the chains. It was a big difference, for us offensively. Completely different ball game, than what we were facing a couple weeks ago because of the penalties.
All right, by the way, if you didn't see the video, if you didn't have access to the video of this press conference, Coach Heupel was actually visibly upset. His eyes were super red, and I mean, he was so, obviously he's the head coach. This stuff matters to him. He doesn't want to go out there and lose, obviously. None of these people want to go out there and lose. So, you could say, on one hand, that this was one of the better games that UCF had put together on offense. But was it the best? And here's what Josh Heupel had to say about that.
Yes and no. End of the day, we're on the wrong side of it in the one play that makes a difference. And, everybody that's on this travel squad, and coaches included, got to be on the right side of that one play that makes a difference. And we have to be better. Leading up to this week, we talked about just, challenging our players and having a fighter's mentality and answering the bell every round. And I do it. The ball didn't always go our way. There's a lot of things that we got to do better. But our kids did answer, and they fought, and they competed. And I think, that is important, that they understand that they did that coming out of this. This moment can either define who we are moving forward, or we can define this moment moving forward. And, for us, everybody in it together. 120 guys on the roster, offense, defense, special teams, black, white, brown, doesn't matter. We got to be in it together.
All right. Well, the one place that they were not in it together was not stopping the Memphis offense. And let's hear what he had to say about that.
Yeah, there's things on offense that we could have done too that changed the game, and we finished drives. First half yardage versus touchdowns. There's a difference there, and there's things that we can do to finish. I mean this when I say it. Just want to win, and you got to find a way to be +1. You got to play complementary football. You got to be in it together, and the ebbs and flows of the game. Just to change the way the game's played at certain times, we can do a better job of that. Everybody together.
And then one of the biggest things that happened through this whole thing was the missed kick by Daniel Orbowski. And we had Daniel on this show, one of the last players actually coming in that we interviewed. So here's what he had to say to Mr. Orbowski after that missed kick.
I messaged to Daniel and said this to the team too, just later in the locker room, that you prepare with urgency, you prepare the same way every week, so that you put yourself in the best position to go lay it on the line. And in athletics and sports, you want to try to ensure that it's going to go the right way when you get that opportunity. Reality in sports doesn't always go your way, and but you can look your brothers in the face and know that you did everything to put yourself in the best position when you get that opportunity. So that was my message to him in that moment.
All right, and then some of the players as well, obviously. I don't know what happened on the sideline with him and Quadri. I'm assuming that Quadri probably went over to him and told him to quit acting like, I don't know how to say it. I want to use my radio tone, and I want to make this, family
you don't want to say a
friendly.
baby, but that's what you mean.
Yeah, acting like a little baby, throwing your helmet. You don't do that. I don't care what level of football you're in, especially college football, though. You don't throw your helmet. You don't punch the sideline pads. You just don't, go destroy the sideline because you missed a kick. You don't. But it happens. It is what it is. But here is what Marlon Williams said to Arbowski.
I talked to him in the locker room. Actually, told him, "Hey, that one play don't win or lose us a game. Yeah, it's the last play of the game, but it was way more mistakes, way more other things that went wrong in the game. That one play don't define the game. And if anybody says something, hey, you can say something to me."
I like that. So he's defending Orbowski, though. If you have anything to say to him, you say it to me. I love that. I think that's awesome. So that makes me think. I don't know. You never know what. I hope, and someday I hope we find out what Quadri Jones went over there and said to him, because that was ugly on national television. We should never have had that.
Made Fox News headlines.
Did it?
Yes, it did.
No,
Front page.
Did not,
and all over ESPN.
Did not know that. That's a bummer. I hate to see that happen to our guys. A couple other comments here. Marlon Williams was one of the guys that was out there, and then Sam Jackson as well. So let's hear what Marlon had to say. These are a few clips of what he had to say after the game.
It's hard. We just want to finish every game on top of the scoreboard, and we didn't do that today. So, any loss is tough. It don't matter how many yards you get. No matter. If I would have had 2 yards today and we won, I would have been happy. It don't matter. We lost. Put it all on us, all on the older guys. We know what it takes to win. We just gotta do it. We gotta get the job done. Right now, we're not getting the job done, and we gotta be better. I don't think nobody on our team like to lose, regardless if we're gonna be playing for a championship or not. We want to win. You feel me? Like that has nothing to do with it. It sucks that we're not gonna have a great chance to reach our goal, but at the end of the day, we want to win the rest of our games every time we step out on the field.
All right, and here's Sam Jackson after the Memphis game.
The only thing you can do when you come back in the locker room, you talk about it, you let it hurt, you move on, fix mistakes. You build each other up, you don't break each other down. At the end of the day, this is a team game. We win, lose as a team, make mistakes as a team, everything happens as a team. And you just got to remind everyone that that's what it is. Our team is really good, and I don't think anyone could disagree with that. It was a great day on offense. At the end of the day, like Marlon said, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day we lost. But we can always build on the success at offense and just keep on going next week, the week after that, and hopefully to continue and we come out on top going, 1-0 every week. No one on this team wants to lose, and that's why everything hurts so much. So our whole goal is always going to be to win the next game, always going to be focused on the next game. Win the rest of our season, doesn't matter. It's going to be hard to get to what we plan on getting to, but, this is college football, man. Anything can happen. That's why you just keep trying to keep going +1 every week.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's what the players and the coach have to say about the game.
Have we transitioned from go 1-0 to +1?
I think that one's in there a little bit. That's kind of a newer one. I think that we've heard that before, but I think it's being used a little bit more now. So,
well, the offense's +1 last week needed to be the defense, and they just stood them up.
Is that like on what was it? There used to be was it Google Chat or something? You could +1 or no, Reddit I think has that, don't they? The +1 thing where you click and it gives somebody an upvote or something.
Yeah, you have that, but I think what I was intending, meaning like when you go to a wedding reservation and you have a +1 that you're reserving your ticket for.
Yeah, well maybe.
And the defense left them hanging, didn't allow the offense to have their +1. They just didn't show up.
All right. Yeah. Well, I don't know where the
Wow,
fuss
I had to
was
explain that joke way too much.
Yeah, it's all right. You explain a lot of things way too much, but that's all right.
Hey.
Okay, so what do we say? I mean, really, what do we say about all this? John,
Well,
I know you got stuff to say because I know you look at numbers a lot and you like to break all this stuff down. Let's let John have a little bit of let's let him get it out a little bit. That's what I invited him here for. I thought maybe he would need to get it out a little bit.
I thought John was our emotional support for this week.
That's what I thought I was brought in for.
Do you want to?
Yeah, to start with kind of like a general.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think really defensively was disappointing. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. Every fourth down they converted. They converted a lot of third downs. They marched down the field in the second half in ways that just made our defense look very bad. I was waiting for that one stop, and then towards the end of the game, I realized it just wasn't going to happen. These guys were gassed. They didn't know what to do. I did see an adjustment from Randy Shannon, though. They moved Aaron Robinson to mirror their best receiver, which was an adjustment, but at the end of the day, it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
The ball was just moving on the ground through the air. They were imposing their will.
Yeah, and they did that. I mean, that's just what they did, and that's how they won this game. And this is another 1-point loss. I hate these 1-point losses. I have said it a million times. The 1-point losses kill me. I hate it. There's nothing worse. I would rather get beat by 20 points than 1 point.
Well, and the way that we've lost the last several games that we've lost we've been leading by double digits in the second half. So it's also, you're getting your heart ripped out too. And I feel for these players for sure.
I was stunned when I was watching the game. Roger, I mean, were you, when you were watching it, I mean,
well, I think you read my texts. So the first half, I actually
put my phone on Do Not Disturb, by the way, because y'all were killing my battery.
Oh, you Ben, can thank Ben for that.
You and Ben were killing my battery.
Yeah, there were some expletives thrown in there. No, but on a real note, the first half I was very, very confident. Obviously, the offense was clicking along. We weren't getting the penalties, although I was a little perturbed by the lack of penalties called on Memphis. Now, and granted, we got away with some too, but especially that one where Marlon was in the end zone and the guy basically bear hugged him the whole way while he was down there. So I'm okay with that as long as you do that consistently throughout the game. But all of a sudden, late in the game, we started getting a bunch of defensive holding calls and stuff like that. So that was a little frustrating. So the first half, I was good. We met our average, which was 26 points a game in the first half, and we actually one-upped it and got 27. The defense did enough to stop Memphis on enough drives, so I was comfortable there. And actually, I'll talk about this in my hot take, but I actually tweeted you something that turned out to be pretty terrible after the game was over. In the second half, I was confident that we were going to continue to score because we were scoring at will as well. So, like John said, they were scoring, but so were we. So I was confident we were going to be able to outlast them. And then actually kind of a funny story, I was about 15 minutes behind because Delta decided to call me in the middle of the game, and I had a flight to come up here, so I had to pick up the phone. So I was about 15 minutes behind, and one of my coworkers called me and was like, "Did you just see that kick?" I was like, "No, I'm 15 minutes behind. Don't say anything." So they didn't say whether we made it or not, but I knew it was going to come down to that. And then someone in the background said, "Loser," and I was like, "Oh," and I was really angry after that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was confident the entire way that we would do it. And one of the things that Dylan hasn't done, as many wonderful things as he's done, is he hasn't led that big game comeback win. And the way we were moving the ball, I figured we'd be set up for a field goal for sure. We just missed it.
Yeah, I mean, he did a great job marching us right down the field there. I mean, no question about that. So,
Yeah, and Jalen Robinson, I mean, that man looked fire, and especially that last drive. I mean, he's a weapon. He's everything that we were expecting him to be.
Yeah. We had three wide receivers with over 170 yards. 3 wide receivers.
Yeah,
over 170 yards. I have to repeat that because it's such. Marlon Williams, 13 catches for 191. Jalen Robinson, 10 catches for 173. Ryan O'Keefe, 4 catches for 175. Now, he had a 93-yarder. That was awesome. And Marlon Williams also had an 85-yarder. That was awesome. So, that packs the numbers up a little bit. Also, Greg McCrae, not over 175, but he caught 4 out of the backfield for 27, which was pretty cool. Longest being 10 yards for him.
Well, you see that we're executing those screens a little bit better on the sidelines, and we're trying to move the defense over to the sidelines and out of the middle of the field since we tend to run up the middle so much. So Marlon's been really, really good at that, and it's been him and Jalen that have kind of been trading off on that. And then Mr. Harris, although he doesn't have the best of hands, is actually a really good blocker, and he's been doing a great job blocking for those screens. I was really, really surprised by, not really surprised. I've kind of seen this coming with O'Keefe the last few weeks, but he really had a breakout game for him. I think this is one of those games where, you gain that confidence, you really start going, and that man can fly. So, when he gets ahead of steam going, he was outrunning everybody. So, was very happy with the wide receiving core. They were creating separation when they needed to. They got behind the defense quite a bit. We didn't do that against Tulsa, but they did a great job on doing that. Jalen Robinson was constantly behind the defense from Memphis. The route running was actually pretty crisp. I was watching the route running, and it was pretty crisp as well. So I was very, very, very happy with the wide receivers. And Marlon, I mean, he's the number 1 receiver right now in the country in yards per game.
I think we have one of the very top offenses as well, if not the top offense.
We have the top offense. And we also have the top QB, Dylan Gabriel, number 1. Shane Buechele from SMU is number 2. And then you have our friend from Clemson.
Yeah, well.
What's astonishing, though, statistically, number 1 in total yards is 636 yards per game. That's 100 more than number 8 Clemson.
That's crazy.
Almost 200 more than those people up in Gainesville. And when you think about some of the explosive plays, we have 36 that are 20 yards or more on the season in 4 games. That's 9 per game. So we're definitely plugging on all cylinders. That was a beautiful thing to watch offensively for us against Memphis.
Yeah, that's cool. That's crazy, actually. And that's what this is designed to do. I mean, we're designed to have an offense that scores more points than anybody else. Normally it happens. Your defense has to help a little bit. There was a little bit of defensive action, though. Tatum Bethune, 11 tackles. That was a good stat for him. I love the way this kid plays. Have since I first saw him out there. I think it was last year. I just knew that there was something about him. Randy Charlton as well, 6 total sacks, or 6 total tackles. 2 tackles for loss for Bethune as well, and half of a sack. I don't know who got the other half of the sack, but
there's a few. They shared a bunch of them. But at the end of the day, our biggest challenge was the cornerbacks. I mean, we have a couple of freshman cornerbacks out there that are playing just simply because we don't have the depth. We have folks that are out for various reasons. And at the end of the day, our defense is predicated on those guys being able to hold down the receivers. And when that doesn't happen, especially when they don't bump them properly, and that's where a lot of this was missing. When you were watching the freshmen, they were trying to bump them off the line to slow them down to allow either the safety blitz or the nickel blitz to affect the passer. When that doesn't happen, they were either missing them or not completing their bump, and then the receiver was getting behind them and they were half step behind. So our our defense has to have that, and you can't really blame them. And I think John said this earlier, that they tried to make some adjustments on that. But if our corners can't handle that one-on-one coverage, then it creates huge problems for our defense and the style of defense that we want to play. So the question is, what do we do about it? Do we keep going, with this defensive scheme, or do we adjust it somehow? We talk a little bit about that with Kyle later, but that to me is what stood out. They were playing soft so that their receivers couldn't get behind them. They were trying to keep the play in front of them, so they weren't going for that tackle. They weren't trying to swat at the ball. They weren't playing, with their arm gently almost wrapped around the receiver and trying to swat at the ball. And especially early on. And when that happens and you're not as physical, you're not throwing off their concentration. They're making catches and bad things happen for the defense.
Yeah, I agree. And, these corners, they're young. They're probably not as physical as an experienced guy. They don't have all of that experience in the game. Thank God DeMonte Coxey was out. It sounds like he's no longer with the Memphis team. I'm not sure what happened there. But one of the things I noticed was Zamari Maxwell, he literally backpedals in times where he's turning his hips before the ball is snapped, which tells me that they are really concerned about him getting beat, whether it's his confidence or his ability. He's backpedaling and running backwards, and a couple teams have taken advantage of that on comeback routes. And I think we're going to continue to see that. Any team that we play that has a good passing attack, a good quarterback like Memphis did, why wouldn't you go right after our corners?
Yeah, definitely. They're going after Maxwell. He's the youngest one out there, obviously, as well. One of the youngest ones. I guess there's probably somebody younger out there than him, but...
Thornton, that's who they were picking on the whole time. Yeah,
Thornton did a good job at times as well, though. He laid a hit on somebody. I think it was him or it was Maxwell.
He came up. Maxwell.
It was Maxwell.
Yeah.
Maxwell laid that hit.
Thornton.
Touched in the end zone.
I think he has, really good potential. He just, these guys are getting thrown in there. So.
Well, you had Lester out there. You had Thornton out there. Maxwell doesn't have very much experience.
Yeah.
They're all young guys that are out there. I mean, hopefully that'll pay dividends long term. But at the end of the day, when you have the three people that you expected to start not out there, I mean, you're going to see stuff like that.
And I remember that we were all worried about this a little bit, that cornerback spot. We were worried about it.
Yeah, I've been worried about it since the beginning of the season because we played a couple teams that didn't really have that good passing attack. So I knew once we ran up into a quarterback who could, understand what's going on, that we'd have some troubles.
Yeah, well, we do. We definitely have some troubles. Besides lack of experience, though, I mean, what do you guys think is the issue? Especially, I mean, it hasn't been the defense every game that's been the issue. Sometimes it's the offense. Sometimes it's the defense. We had a lot of penalties 1 game, 2 games. It's not always been the defense.
Well, we also haven't had any tune-up games. I mean, we have 3 or 4 tune-up games. So
this is 2020. I mean,
I know.
This season just is what 2020 has been the entire year. Thank God it's almost over. Hopefully it changes once we, January, 1st. Hopefully we just start off a lot better.
Well, that's one of the problems with some of the young guys is they didn't have that game against a FAMU to get that confidence built up of a disruptive defense. I mean,
they didn't have their entire spring. They didn't have a normal, this season's going to have an asterisk anyway. I wish that it was completely not in the record books. That would be nice, but it's not. So,
no, and at this point, it is what it is. We've just got to use it for development of players. So I'm glad to see that we are rotating some of those younger guys in there, just simply because it's going to help us long term. But then you've got situations like the Devad Wilson situation, right? I mean, I still don't understand why he's not cleared yet, but apparently he's not going to be ready to come in. He's got his clearance, is what I'm being told, and that he's going to be back for Houston because he's got to catch up. But there's no reason Devad Wilson in the COVID year should not be playing on the field for UCF by this game.
Well, it's going to help a lot if he can, I think. I mean, it'll help big time. I think so.
Yeah, it just blows my mind that can happen. And we even had Harvey from Virginia that came in and he was after Doused, and somehow he was able and got cleared to play, and he was playing last week. So I don't understand why that whole situation's going on, but that is part of what we were counting on to be able to counter the loss of Tate Gowan and Devontae Dawson, who both opted out this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have strength and conditioning here with a question mark, and it says underneath, a lot of fans are questioning this. Is that something that people are questioning? I haven't seen that personally.
Yeah, I've seen it. There was quite a few people talking about strength and conditioning. The question was, were these guys looking gassed at the end of the game? And if we're missing depth, because we know we're missing depth on the D line, we know we're missing depth on the secondary. By the way, we're missing our starting middle linebacker, right? So we're missing people out of the linebacker rotation, and we're not very. We don't have a whole lot of depth there either. And we're running 90 plays a game, and they're running just about 90 plays a game. They're going to get tired. Yeah. It's basically what we do to other teams, we did to ourselves in a way.
Yeah, well, our offense doesn't take very long to score, and they're not sitting over there for very long. I mean, sometimes they're only over on the sideline for less than 60 seconds. So, yeah, well, and that's another thing, going with this 2020 thing. There was a lot of time where these guys would have been working out with each other and doing things that they didn't have the chance to do. I'm not making excuses, but there's a lot of things that are playing into what's happening this season, and it has a lot to do with the COVID-19 stuff and everything else. I mean, who knows which of these players? There has to be some of these players that had COVID-19 throughout the time. UCF stopped telling us about them. We heard 3 in the very beginning when they started practices, when they all came back to campus. We don't know who those 3 were, and who knows if 1 or 2 of them have had it since. We've had some guys missing games for no apparent reason. So it could be that as well, and who knows what that does to the body and how you come back from that as an athlete as well. So there's all kinds of things that I'm just throwing this entire season into the 2020 bucket, and I'm going to flush the entire thing on New Year's Eve.
Well, it's tough because it almost feels, parts of it feel like 2015, of the time when we got all those scholarship reductions caught up to us. We had a few years there where we didn't recruit as well as we wanted to. We were just depleted with some injuries. A similar situation on the defensive side of the ball, I think, is happening here, where we're just depleted. We don't have a lot of guys that are eligible, that are healthy. Some have opted out, and we're having to turn to a lot of youth that just doesn't have a lot of experience. And some of those guys might develop into be good players in the future, but right now, we got to play games, and everybody's facing this problem, but I think it hurts us a little bit more this season, just kind of the overall situation. And that's why I don't really expect to see a ton of improvement through the rest of the season defensively.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, he makes a good point. I mean, this could go one of 2 ways. After this next week could go one of 2 ways. It will go one of 2 ways. It will. You'll either win or you'll lose, one way or the other. So, does the rest of this season turn into 2015, or do the players suck it up and go out there and fix it? Whatever the problem is, whatever they can fix. Do the coaches get this team together, or do they let it fall apart like 2015?
Yeah, I think you got to credit Memphis a little too. I mean, I'm being a little bit loud there with that comment, but
no, I mean it's true though.
They're good passing attack. They're good offense. They know what to do with the ball, and that's one of those things. I think our defense thrives obviously on creating havoc behind the line of scrimmage. We're not being very effective at that. We're going to give up plays. We know that. And we had 1 turnover in that game. So games where we have 3-4 turnovers, it's a whole different story. We're giving the ball right back to the offense. They're going to go down and score pretty efficiently. And when you have those close games like that where you're not creating turnovers, we're just not built to stop teams.
Yeah, and we talked about that as well. There were going to be times where the defense, I remember specifically talking about that. There's going to be times where the defense doesn't have 6 turnovers. They're not going to be able to carry us. Remember when we said that?
Yeah, and to add on to that, that feeds back to the defense again, right? Because the whole goal is we know we're going to score. So if we give our offense enough turnovers and positive turnovers, which means we're not giving the defense or the opposition the opportunity to score as well, then we're going to start making that other opposing offense one-dimensional. And when you do that, it's a lot easier to scheme against that. You wear, if we're constantly blitzing, which we constantly are, it's going to wear that offensive line down. And, that's going to open up some doors on the defensive side of the ball as well. And every game that we've struggled, we have not won the turnover battle or we've been relatively close. And, that's a big part of it. Our what we do well on defense is it kind of goes back to when the 2017 year, you constantly see them trying to punch the ball out while they're making a tackle, or now you're seeing them do the fundamentals like get in passing lanes. You'll see a middle linebacker or a defensive lineman jump up in a passing lane and bat down a ball. That's the kind of stuff that they're doing really, really, really well. The challenge is they're not getting the penetration that they need early. So what you saw Memphis do was they started going to the outside, and our linebackers have not been really doing a really good job the first couple of games keeping those guys between the tackles, because once we give them the edge, it stretches us out and we're going all in on the rush. It opens up. There's not much left in the backfield to be able to stop that. So they did that first, and then they started going up the gut when we started spreading out our blitzes or holding a guy back or peeling one back, or you'd see a tight end go out, and that would take another person out of the box. So when all that happens, your overload blitzes go away. And when your overload blitzes go away, you're left with man-on-man situation and giving the opposing quarterback enough time to pick you apart, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So is this a culture issue? Is there a culture issue with the team, especially as far as like what we saw, on the sideline with the two players kind of getting into it with each other and stuff like this? Do you think we're having that kind of issue with these guys? I don't think a lot of that is going on. I do think that there's a little bit of it, though.
One thing I think about just being sorry, Roger, you want to go?
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
No. You just paused. I wasn't sure if you were going to jump in. Go right ahead.
One of the things that I think about just in this weird season is you have opt-outs, you've had some injuries, some guys getting banged up, and, you start to have to think about yourself a little bit more in this year than you do in any other year. So the idea of getting a team behind as a team has to be really challenging, and that goes across college football. But as you're seeing our situation with 10 opt-outs, I know 2 came back, but a few big injuries, guys probably have to start psychologically questioning themselves and what they're putting themselves through, and that little bit of hesitation can make a huge difference come game day.
Yeah, well, there's a couple players even that tweeted, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, Roger. Marlon Williams tweeted last night, "I'm sorry, Knight Nation, we have to be better," and then he had the little broken heart icon. And then Greg McCrae, "I'm so hurt, dog. I played my heart out. We gonna bounce back. Believe that," with the little swords crossed and a black heart and a gold heart. So, and then Bentavious Thompson, "It ain't how we start, it's how you finish, my brother. We're going to keep pushing." He said that to Greg McCrae after. So, and after we talk about this culture thing a little bit more, I've got a couple of new segments that we're going to debut about stuff like this as well. So
yeah, and Andrew, to your point, and I'll kind of address John too, because he kind of brought up the 2015 debacle.
Kind of
in my opinion, what's that?
It kind of feels like it in a way.
To me, I think it's different because I don't see the players.
We haven't lost
up.
to Furman yet.
Yeah, well, that's true. We beat Georgia Tech. But at the end of the day, now, yeah. But at the end of the day, 2015 was about coaches giving up and players giving up. And I don't see that here. You heard that you heard that in Josh's emotional interviews earlier. What I see is a team that really wants to win, and when they're falling short, I don't want them to have that mindset where they feel like they have to apologize for the work. I mean, I get it. They care about us, which is amazing. And there's always been, with UCF and this whole underdog narrative, there's always been this connection between the players and Knight Nation. And it's what's allowed us to grow such a passionate fan base. And love us or hate us, everybody pretty much recognizes that we're a passionate fan base. So I don't want the players to get in their own heads and putting too much pressure on themselves. And that's kind of what I'm worried about. I will say that we've talked about this in the past. The discipline is just different. And we have not had enough exposure. Even Kyle hasn't with the players and Coach Heupel and how he's coaching them up at practice and all that, as we normally would in the past, and Kyle would especially, which is why part of the reason why we love him so much on our show. But without that, we really don't know. But you see these outbursts, and it's like, okay, is it just because these kids are young, or is it because Coach is so passionate in his speeches and effusive in his emotions and all that stuff, and these kids are taking that in, and they're not getting that discipline portion? I don't know. But in the long run, the flag part got fixed. They went to a hand count as opposed to a clap instead of an audible count. And, that seems to have gotten fixed. So there's parts of it where I see it like they're making progress or doing the things they need to do. And there's parts where Obarski's throwing his helmet across the field after he misses the kick, or the helmet throwing that resulted in a penalty a game or two ago. So I don't know. It's definitely not 2015, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if he struck the right balance yet without some senior leaders that are more vocal in the locker room.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, moving on a little bit. I want to do this new segment that I thought of today. A couple things from Twitter, fan tweets. I'm just going to pick some random ones or ones that I liked. Not going to really have, the nasty ones in there, so I'm going to keep that family friendly. But I thought that these ones were good. And I'm not going to say who they are from as well. I'm just going to read the tweets. I'm not going to divulge who they're from. So I just think that would be better in this situation because there might be some that are a little controversial. So we're just going to have tweets that I liked. Andrew's, favorite fan tweets. Okay, so here's the first one. I'm just sad. I'm just as sad as the next that our Knights lost. However, in capital letters, some of y'all need to step back from the ledge and relax. Acting like a child throwing a temper tantrum when your team loses isn't a good look. Instead, try showing our boys some love. They need that right now. Hashtag UCF family. I really liked that one a lot. That one was cool. The second one here is, I get the frustration with coaches. I'm there as well. But it still bothers me to see people tag coaches to express their frustration. Those guys work their tails off, and I'm sure they're not feeling great today. We may need a change. I'll leave it to DW, Danny White. But coaches are human. Like that one as well. And then this one was one of my favorites. And this one could be one of those ones that is a little bit controversial. I'm still waiting on those keyboard cowboys to apologize for Matt Lee being awful, for people being awful to Matt Lee last week. They're not going to because it means they have to admit being awful people. Lee handled the undue venom well and backed his words with action. Well done. So I thought that one was cool. There was a lot of people. It kind of, matches the other two. There were a lot of people ripping on Matt Lee for that game that he had against Tulsa. Yes, he had a bad game, but, these guys never want to have games like that. Coaches don't want to have games like that. Players definitely don't want to have games like that, especially when you're a redshirt freshman like we talked about with Matt Lee. So that's that for this week. Fan tweets. It's my new thing. And we're going to go with it. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I'm sure you saw some of those. Another thing we're going to kind of throw in here for this week, I'm going to call this one From the Message Boards. We're going to find something from the message boards that we like or we don't like and talk to you about that as well. This one I absolutely loved. I thought it's a great explanation of kind of the way things happened and a different way to look at this. This one comes from Kirk's Jerk 79 on UCFsports.com, The Dungeon. You can go there, pay your money, and get all the latest information and talk about it with a bunch of people. That's run by Brandon Helwig. It's absolutely awesome. And there are good people on there. Some not so good. But this guy's one of the good ones. Number one, there's too much pressure on this program, and it's fans to be perfect. This is a function of being stuck in the G5. As long as this separate but unequal setup continues, the pressure on us is going to be greater than most of our G5 counterparts. We don't belong in the G5, and everyone knows it. We have legit fan support, facilities, media market, recruiting base, university size, and yet we're stuck in this pressure-filled quagmire with Tulsa and Tulane and countless other schools who should be in FCS. Number two, this year is crazy. Football teams thrive on schedule and routine. Sprinkle in injuries and opt-outs, and you get the very mixed bag that we're seeing all over the country. Number three, Heupel is still a young head coach, and he's still learning how to win close games. The reality tonight is that he and the O put us into this position to win tonight, but some of the kids didn't execute. The kicker missed, Otis fumbled. Those things lose tough games on the road. Number four, all of that said, this program does need an alumni infusion. We've always had an ex-player or two on the staff, and it feels like a guy like Becton or 24K might go a long way towards helping the locker room. I've seen way too many guys lose their cool the last few weeks, and that has to stop. So I thought that was pretty good, put into words after what we witnessed.
Well, the one thing I will say to that is Heupel is still a young head coach, but most of the things that people are now calling mistakes were done before it was a one-score game, right? Basically, it was during the first half or the third quarter when we're up 14 to 21 points. That's what they're criticizing. Yet they're turning around and the context of a one-score game. You don't make decisions as if you were in a one-score game when you're up by 14 or 21 points, people. And that's extremely frustrating to me. But the overall message, 100% agree with that. The whole G5 thing, I mean, think about it. When does it stop being fun to be the counterculture brand, right? The challenger brand. It's when you aren't winning anymore, right? Yeah. And that avalanche of stuff keeps coming back at you. But at the end of the day, he's 100% right. I mean, we're on that weird precipice where we really should be a P5 program. And we're just not there yet. And I think that has to come with consistency and performance. So,
alrighty. Well, we need to take a break because we're 53 minutes into this, and my sponsors are going to kill me for their stuff not being heard yet. So let's do that, and we'll come back and talk about a lot more of this stuff.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690 386-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chad Barr Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline at Night, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation, or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights, charge on.
All right, we're back, and this next segment, By the Numbers, Roger, this is kind of your thing. You and John are really good at the numbers, so I'm going to let you guys discuss this real quick. Roger, take it away.
All right, so the first thing I want to do is take a moment to recognize the offensive performance of our stud sophomore quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. Not just from this game, because we've kind of talked about that, although 71% completion percentage is the highest he's had this season and is phenomenal. But for the season, through 4 games, he has thrown for 1,756 yards, so almost 2,000 yards. He leads the FBS. With Shane Buechele, also from the AAC and SMU, following behind. For the year, he's at 64.9% completion percentage, which is phenomenal, 14 TDs and 2 interceptions. He's got 165.8 rating. Folks, those are Heisman numbers. And if we were just talking about this in the break, if Dylan had won those games, there would be a huge amount of Heisman hype. He was already getting that pregame, unlike Milton, or preseason, unlike Milton was. And, again, one thing people are forgetting is he can opt back in essentially for another sophomore season. So if he wants to, he can say next season is his sophomore season according to what counts against his eligibility. So it's ridiculous numbers, and it really is for a UCF quarterback in between Milton and now what Dylan is doing. There's no better time in UCF history for quarterbacks. So just appreciate what he's doing. On the rushing side of the game, we have a very, very balanced attack again this week. So we had 47 attempts versus 49 passing attempts. So it's actually, we've been kind of trending more passing as of late than rushing, but we're achieving that balance that Heupel's looking for. Just under 200 yards this week, 4.2 yard average, which is up, and it's actually a pretty solid average. If you can get 4.2 yards per carry, you're doing well. The big thing I want to highlight here is blocking. So there's a couple of things that are going on. One is that you see some different blocking schemes from Heupel. So we're engaging the 2 tight end sets a lot more than what we were in the past, and I specifically want to highlight Jake Hescock because he's been an absolute beast road grading for folks. But that seems to be working, and it's a tweak that allows us to overcome some of our more recent shortcomings with our offensive line. So excited about that. In general, the blocking was also excellent for the pocket for Dylan. He didn't have to worry about a collapsing pocket this game. He had a lot of time to find his receivers, allow them to get separation. And for the running game as well, it created some holes for Otis and for Greg, where they were able to find some clear lanes to run through and get to the second level on some of those situations. Now, the one glaring issue, again, is the short yardage situations where everybody knows we're going to run. And that's still something we have to attenuate. Andrew, I think, had a suggestion that maybe since we're using 2 back sets for tight ends, why don't we just switch one of the running backs out for a tight end and let him road grade his way through there. So that might be a good idea.
Yeah, I just thought that, if we need a little bit of a bigger body back there, those guys know how to handle the ball and hold on to it. So, we've seen it with offensive linemen. Why not put somebody a little smaller back there that maybe could run around a little bit better if they had to.
I think if Marlon Williams wasn't so critical in the passing game right now, we would see some of that because he definitely is a guy that can prove he can run with the ball.
Absolutely. And he would do it too.
We were using him on sweeps last year and the beginning of this year too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And then in general, for the year, I kind of want to talk, or for this game, I kind of want to talk about how special this game actually was. Folks, we had 1,501 yards of offense in this game. That is the most offense since the Texas versus Oklahoma game that had multiple overtimes in 2016, and makes Dylan Gabriel the first QB. Now, here's a bad stat. The first QB to throw for over 600 yards and a loss since, and I threw this in here for you, Andrew, Patrick Mahomes did that in that 2016 game. So this game was a school record for Dylan. And coming into the game, UCF led the FBS with a 582.3 yard per game average. We have now upped that somehow to 636 yards per game. So the one bad side of that is our defense conversely ranks fourth from the bottom in the FBS for defense. And then the last thing I wanted to cover this week is just penalties. Last week we were at 18 for 124. Most of those were pre-snap penalties. This week, only 10, still 96 yards, which is a whole lot of yards, but they weren't pre-snap penalties. So you can see there are a lot more yards with a lot less penalties, which means they were different PIs, holding, that sort of stuff. So not a lot of pre-snap penalties. They were using the clapping as opposed to an audible snap count. So that worked out really well. And the offense was just a whole lot better. The offensive line was just a whole lot better than they were last week. So kudos to the team. They seem to figure that out this week. And that was it for this week.
Alrighty. Well, we've talked so much, and we're already an hour into the show. I think we should probably talk to Kyle Israel. So let's take a little break here, and then we'll be right back with Kyle Israel.
I'm Jeff Allen. Elsewhere around the American, our spotlight game of the week between Tulsa and Cincinnati was postponed to December 5th due to positive COVID tests with the Bearcats. The rest of the schedule went off without a hitch starting on Friday night with SMU's 37-34 overtime win against Tulane as the Mustangs go to 5-0 overall and 2-0 in conference. The game produced 7 lead changes before Mustang kicker Chris Nagar hit a 34-yard field goal in overtime to win it. Houston went out of conference but fell to number 13 BYU 43-26, a game they had led by 5 at the end of 3 quarters. Navy remains atop the AAC, improving to 3-0 with a 27-23 win at East Carolina. The tandem of fullback Nelson Smith and fullback Jameel Carruthers combined for 253 of Navy's 318 total yards. Temple Fashion Day second-half comeback as the Owls erased a 31-20 third-quarter deficit to rally for a 39-37 win against USF at Lincoln Financial Field. Quarterback Anthony Russo threw for 4 touchdowns, but the decisive score came from defensive end Arnold Ibikiti, who found the end zone on an 11-yard fumble return in the fourth quarter, put the Owls on top for good. I'll recap those contests and get you set for this week's games, which includes our Spotlight Game of the Week between top 25 teams as Cincinnati takes on SMU in a critical division tilt. That's all in this week's AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
All right, please welcome back our wonderful analyst, Kyle Israel. Kyle, oh boy. First of all, I'm going to start out by quoting a tweet that you had on your Twitter last night at 19:53 or 7:53. Sorry, I use 24-hour time because I do it at work. So 19:53 is 7:53 p.m., pretty much directly after the game was over, and you said, "This is not a product we can accept," and you addressed it right to at Danny White.
Yeah.
What?
Wow.
There was a lot worse ones than that out there. I can guarantee that, and we'll read some of them later. But what do you mean by that?
You know, I think when we've created some serious expectations within our program, and our athletic administration has been the ones to push those expectations. And we've called ourselves national champions, and we've hung a banner, and we've done all these things that we should have done. But I think when you look at the games that we've needed to win in the last 2 or 3 years with the players that we've had, we've fallen short in some really, really critical games. And it's not as though we've been blown out. It's not as though we didn't belong in the football games, and quite the contrary. We've been ahead in many of those games, or right there to win it. And, I made a comment a couple weeks ago, and I'm really trying to not be extremely critical because you can take a lot of positives from yesterday, but we've lost the games that matter. We've lost the close contests. We haven't, handled some of these scenarios where you get into a situation and the game is tight and you need something. You need a big play from offense. You need a stop on defense. And we've really fallen short. And this is in line with our administration increasing the prices, the season ticket prices, going out actively right now and letting everybody know how we're financially struggling and really need the support, and asking people to hang on to their season tickets that they've committed to specifically this season. And it's very frustrating because we have this groundswell and crescendo of support. We have people supporting this program that never have in the past, both financially and in person in the stands. And we're just losing these really critical games. And it's not as though we're out talented. It's not as though, like I said, we weren't in them to win them. We've lost very close critical games. And I think, that product and what we're seeing, that's what makes it very, very frustrating. And, I put it to Danny White, and I respect Danny. I think he's a phenomenal AD. I think he's done so much for this school. And I think he made a good hire in Josh Heupel. I really do. But I think that there's got to be some pressure from him to Coach Heupel and the staff, because what's going to happen is guys like us, right? We're not going to walk away from this program. We could go winless like we did and still be, putting out podcasts and supporting and, buying season tickets. But we're going to lose this fringe fan group if we're not careful, fringe fan base, because what's happening is people are having to make different decisions in life. People are making decisions about, where do I spend my extra money? Where do I, put my time and energy when it comes to COVID and the challenges that has arisen? So, I just put that out there really to say, hey, we're not going to sit on we're not sitting on our hands as a fan base. Like, we expect better because we are better, and we're losing these really critical close games. And we could really be, guys, if you think about it, we're out of the top 25, right? But over the last 2 years, we're a handful of really close games we should have won, from being a top 5 team right now.
Yeah, we're out of the top. I think
that's what's challenging.
We're actually out of the top 50.
Right.
Which kind of bothers me. I mean, but we deserve to be at this point with our 2 losses, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. We haven't proven to anybody anything. I mean, we put up like ridiculous numbers on offense. Ridiculous. Almost 800 yards of offense. And, our defense couldn't stop anything. They put up 703 on us. Mm-hmm. This is the thing that I'm going to go to a question real quick from a guy on Twitter. I'm going to have you kind of answer this one, or if you can, or comment on it. Why did this? This comes from Golden Knight 2. Why did the secondary get so shredded? It's absolutely embarrassing. Is this a lack of depth, talent, or the absence of second half Randy?
Well, I think that we have some really young guys at the corner position that are going to have to grow into their roles. At the same time, you're playing a 6-year quarterback, right, with some very talented wide receivers. So I feel like you got to give credit to Memphis. I was, Ryan Silverfield, Memphis's head coach, was a graduate assistant at UCF when I was there. Never, ever at that point in time did I think he would be a head coach. But the way that he had his team fight and hang in there and never give up in that game was pretty obvious. And I think that they're very, very talented at some of those skill positions. But for us, it's youth. I think that we probably had this really, really gelled defensive back unit, which you thought would arguably be maybe the strongest point on our football team, and injuries and, players opting out and some of those things, which I totally respect, have put us in a position where that's not one of our strengths. And I think secondly, our offense is just so on point 90% of the time that those guys are on the field a lot, and you get tired late in games. I mean, Memphis scored 2 touchdowns in basically the last 3 minutes and 41 seconds of the football game. And not like 30-yard drives, 80-plus yard drives each time. And I think that they were worn down, and they're young in some areas. And secondly, when I look at the defensive backfield, I look at the defensive line first, and we're getting zero pressure. And we're struggling along the defensive front, which I think is making it much harder for our defensive backs to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and our defensive line to me looks a lot smaller than a lot of the other teams that were a lot of the offensive line of teams that we're playing, which is not really totally normal for us. So there's definitely issues going on, especially on defense. Roger or John? John, you got anything here?
Yeah, I would just say what was encouraging to me on the defensive backs were they were in position for most of the time. It wasn't that they were blowing assignments. They just were there. They didn't make a play on the ball, or they didn't get their head around. So obviously a lot of youth there. They'll learn from some of that. But what was encouraging to me is they're not out there just blowing it. They're just not making plays.
No, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I would jump in on that too. I mean, when we're talking about the cornerbacks, and I actually had 3 things that I picked up while you were talking there, Kyle. You mentioned the dynamic with Danny White and the coaching staff. And what's unique about our dynamic is that Danny White actually went out and hired our defensive coordinator. So this isn't Josh Heupel going to hire him. He went out there, got him. I think everybody thinks Randy Shannon's a very capable coach. The challenge right now in my mind is, one, he plays a very, very attacking style of defense. And I would argue from the pressure standpoint, the tackles for a loss that we've experienced, I think, would actually be a counter argument to that. Last week, it was 11 tackles for a loss. This week, we only had 6, but we've been averaging about 8 to 11, which is actually pretty solid. And we had, I think it was 2 sacks. But the thing that gets me about this, and we're not in practice, so we don't see it, but we've got these young corners back there. It requires, his brand of defense requires them to play man exclusively on the outside. And to John's point, my note from the first half was they were playing really, really soft, meaning it was almost like they were trying to keep them to the boundary. They wouldn't attack the receiver for fear that they would get behind them. So I saw a lot of that going on. I also saw, guys just on the bump coverage, they just weren't slowing them down enough as they were getting down the field. And then they'd get turned around, and then all of a sudden they'd be just a half step too slow. But to me, I think defensively, the challenge is we don't have the personnel that have the experience right now to run what Randy wants to run. Pair that with someone who, to your point, was a 6-year senior who's seen our defense before and was really motivated to beat us because he's lost every time he's played us. So I think that's what we saw. Now, what we can do about it for the rest of the season, that's the big question, because without them switching, maybe dropping more people back, I don't see us being able to get pressure with 3 down linemen. As it is right now, we're pulling a linebacker down or a safety or something like that to get that unbalance the line and try to get pressure on the quarterback. So from your perspective, what are your thoughts around that and things that we could do to offset that weakness since we can't play the way that we want to?
Well, I mean, one of the things would be going to more of a zone shell coverage. And with that being the case, then your front 7 really has to be stout and stopping the run. And listen, a lot of those tackles for losses, those come on stunts and games and twist up front where we confuse the offensive linemen and we're able to slip into the backfield. But But when it comes to plays where you just see, 3 or 4 down and them running right at us, like that's where I see the struggle. We're not stout enough to drop 3 guys into coverage at the linebacker position and still stop the run, or not blitz and still stop the run at times. And it's when you see a game with 700 yards on offense on each side of the ball, nearly 800 for UCF, like there's so much context inside of just one football game that it's kind of mind-numbing to try to piece it all together, right? Like this wasn't a 21-17 football game that was hard fought and a bunch of punts, and like there's just so many statistics, so many yards that it's hard to really wrap your head around. I mean, 600 passing yards for Dylan Gabriel and 5 TDs is ludicrous to think about. It really is. And so when you think of it on the defensive side, it feels like let's just hang in there. But you go to the first half and Memphis scored 14 points. They arguably could have scored another one, but Richie Grant did a great job of stripping that running back there on the first drive of the game. But you're going into halftime with a 27-14 lead, and you give up 36 points in the second half, and 21 of those in the fourth quarter, and 14 of those in the last 3 minutes. And, it's like, where is the intensity to finish? Where and when is the person going to step up on the defensive side of the football from a leadership perspective and put their foot down and say, we've got to get a stop now? And when I look at the huddle that we had on the timeout prior to the last touchdown when they were down around the 6 or 7 yard line, I kind of noticed that there were players that were not engaged with the huddle. You could see McKenzie in there trying to get people fired up. But it's as though you just felt Memphis is going to score here no matter what, and we got to hope our offense goes down and put us in position to win the game, which they did. But at some point, the accountability has to go to the players as far as, hey, we can't afford to give up 36 points in the second half of a football game, especially when we're up 21. And it's really just hard. It's hard to even complain in a game like this because of what I said, just this massive stat line where there's so much good to take away, right? Like I was so excited in that third quarter, be like, yeah, podcast tomorrow is going to be awesome. Got plenty to talk about. Like lots of guys playing. Ryan O'Keefe has a 93-yard streak. Like, and then boom.
Well, we still have plenty to talk about. It's just not good stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of good stuff, though, I want to kind of dive into this Dylan Gabriel thing a little bit. I mean, my Lord, he went off.
Goodness gracious, man.
35 of 49 for 601 yard, 5 touchdowns, longest being 93, and he was sacked 3 times.
And ran the ball extremely well at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Got a couple runs in there, got a touchdown run. Like Dylan is
12 runs
really
for
good.
64 yards and a touchdown.
I mean, so what is that? Like 665 yards of total offense for him?
Yes.
6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, Coach Heupel, like I see how incredible and the type of things that your offense can do. Like there's no doubt about that. And so when I tweeted that to Danny last night, I almost wanted to pause myself and be like, well, look at this brand we have on the field. We're exciting. We score. We go up and down the field. But there's more to football than that. There's decision making, and there's when do you kick a field goal and when do you go for it? When do you riverboat gamble on 4th and 2 or 4th and 6? When you kick a field, those things are the things that I kind of scratch my head about because those decisions become so much critical later in football games, and that's what kind of is challenging to me.
Well, speaking of, hold on real quick here, Roger. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun here, but you got the next one. Speaking of field goals, obviously there's an issue, and we have a young freshman, or he's not a freshman, he's a sophomore, I believe now. Maybe a redshirt freshman. No, because he kicked off in every game last year, so he's a sophomore. but hasn't kicked a lot of field goals. Obviously, Heupel likes to go for it on fourth down a little bit, which is I'm all about going for it on fourth down
I'm fine with that.
when it works. But do you think that he's a little bit afraid to put Orbowski out there because this was the first game-winning kick that I think in college, obviously, that he's ever had or, had the ability to attempt. But he, does go out there when we could kick some field goals and tries to go on fourth down. Is he worried that Obarski's going to come out there and shank something? We saw that the kickoffs are a lot better from him this year. They were pretty horrible last year. He would kick the ball out of bounds a lot, but we know that he has a leg. We've seen him in tape, not with UCF, before when he was even in high school, kicking 60-yard field goals, with nobody, coming against him, with no defense, obviously. And then what do you tell a guy that you putting yourself in the coach's shoes? What do you tell the guy after losing that missing that what would have been a game-winning field goal?
Have a little bit more composure.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not happy
first thing I would say
about him coming to the sideline and throwing his helmet. That looks so bad on TV, number one. But we've played the game. You don't do that. No matter what happens, you don't do that.
No, I saw, that's as bad as some of the things that I saw when I played 5 years of semi-pro football, when there's, coaches that aren't controlling anything. You go back to what he did versus ECU, right? He was like special teams player of the year in the American. He was 3 of 3 on field goals. I think he was 6 of 6 on extra point. So the long in that game, I think, was only like 33 yards. So we've seen him, kick well. I don't know. I get our theory behind the go for it on 4th and 2, go for it on 4th and 6. Like, we do have an offense that, at least 50% of the time can get those. But you also got to get off the field as well. I think they were, I think Memphis was like 5 of 5 on 4th down last night or something like that.
They were, and we were 3 of 5.
Yeah. So, if those 3 that we didn't convert, were 6 more points, I thought the timing of it, especially there, I think in the second quarter, we were up 13 points and it was 4th and 6. And I think it would have been somewhere around like a 42-yard field goal. And like, when you have the chance to make it a 16-point game there, knowing that Memphis is a pretty good offense, really good offense, like, I thought that's the time we should have tried and kicked the field goal and just continued our momentum. And when you miss that, when you don't get it, Memphis gets some momentum and good field position right away. And so I thought that was going to come back and potentially bite us in the butt when we were up 21 points in the third quarter. I didn't think that would be the case, but it ultimately was a big factor in the football game. And at the very minimum, we would have been able to go into overtime.
All right, Roger.
Yeah, when you're talking about special teams, there were so many different things that you can talk about there. One thing I noticed and have been kind of noticing is we've had a few blocked attempts, whether it be extra points or field goal attempts. And what I'm seeing is that the blockers are just not getting it done. So on that last kick that he had, that Obarski had, he seemed a little rushed as he was going through the motion. So I don't know if that was because they know that their blocking isn't holding up or what's going on there. But to me, it's interesting to hear you say that, because part of me, when I was in the heat of the game yesterday, I was like, go for it every time, because I have that confidence in our offense. And when Andrew and I and Ben were talking about this game before on last week's show, one of the things that I had said was they have no defense, and because they have no defense, I'm comfortable putting the ball in our offense's hand and being able to basically outscore them. I think we would have gotten enough stops with our defense, but clearly that didn't bear itself out. I just what I'm really trying to wrap my head around is on the first half, the defense was getting stops after that first punch out by Richie. And then the second half, I don't know what changed. I didn't see any major personnel changes. Zamari Maxwell was in a little bit more, and he actually played better. Dylan Lester got burned a few times. So I don't know what the difference was. Was there anything that you saw that we were doing differently, or was it just receivers making plays? Because hands, give a hand to Memphis, because their receivers actually did make some very good plays.
They made great plays, and it's really hard for me to see if there's anything that really changed with us. But it kind of comes back to this feeling that I have that when we play really good early in games, when it feels like, we've got control of the football game. And it's like whenever we're starting to lose momentum, we can't put our foot in the ground sometimes and just either make that big stop and I've been trying to, for the last 24 hours, put words to what I'm feeling. And front runner kind of comes to mind, but I don't think it encapsulates what I'm trying to say. It's like we play very good and free when there's not a lot of pressure, but then we don't finish that with the extra level of momentum, extra level of tenacity, extra level of quote unquote finish. We're up 21 points and we're not willing or able or capable of just putting the nail in the coffin.
So is that I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, it's okay.
I want to ask, is that a coaching thing? Is that a problem with coaching? Are the coaches supposed to teach their players to do that?
I don't think so. When I think back on it, I think that the coach can set the tone for the culture of the program and how they approach those things. But I can remember in games, at every level, knowing that, okay, we have our foot on these guys' throats. I'm gonna ride that wave of momentum and that wave of comfort, because it's pretty comforting having your foot on somebody's throat. It's pretty uncomfortable to have somebody on their foot on your throat. So I'm going to just anchor in this level of confidence and momentum and just put the nail in the coffin. And, I think that's what's so frustrating to me. And I can't put my finger on it, especially, what I've learned is when you're not inside the program, when you're not in the locker room, you really don't have any type of context for what's going on. We can talk all day about what we think and, who's leaders and who are not leaders, but we really don't know because there's so many variables with kids between 18 and 22 years old. At the same time, I just feel like, and this is what was frustrating to me, and this is why I was tweeting out to Danny. It's like we are up in these football games and we can't finish them. And it's like when rubber meets the road and when our backs are against the wall and we've let somebody back into a game, we just don't have this killer instinct, and we don't really have this. We certainly don't have Shaquem Griffin. We certainly don't have McKenzie on the field as a player. We don't have some of these key leaders, and that for us in 2017 and 18 was very obvious, right? We could tell who the player leaders were on the field by reading body language and their actions. And right now it's like things start to go south and you don't see that gelling of a team or a unit. And I think that's what I was alluding to, is that there's a frustration, who's going to get this team together? Because when you have players fighting on the sidelines and when you have frustration and you have penalties, it's a lack of discipline. At the end of the day, it's a lack of discipline. And that is on coaches.
Yeah. So are you asking Danny White to say something to Coach Heupel and say, look, we need to get it together. You need to get your team closer. What is it? I mean, that's what, when I saw your tweet, and I'm not trying to argue with you or anything else. I just want to, what can Danny White do about that besides getting a new coach or something, which is not going to happen.
No, and again, I don't think it should.
He could definitely pull him in his office and have a man-to-man talk with him. Look, Josh, you're embarrassing us on national TV. with your players, not controlling themselves, number one. But then, obviously there's a lack of discipline on the field and off the field.
It's just unacceptable. I mean, it's simply unacceptable to lose football games in the fashion that we're losing them. And I don't think you should fire Coach Heupel, but I think that he should be, and maybe he does, right? Again, we don't have the context, but he should make it known that, he is not happy or okay with how these things are unfolding, because ultimately our program is going backwards. And I don't mean that as far as what I really mean is that we're not capitalizing on these very rare, unique opportunities to be in the top 10, to be in the top 7, to be in the top 5. And is that Danny White's fault? No. But he should hear from a fan base that him and his staff are definitely going out to and asking for money, that this is frustrating, because if you want our support, we're trying to do that, but we're not capitalizing on these really big time opportunities for this program. And, that's just really, really what I was trying to say. And obviously there's an element of in the moment, right?
Right. I mean,
when I tweeted that,
yeah, well, we all know that.
There should be a level of, it's frustrating. It's
is.
really, really frustrating to lose games this way.
And I'm not saying that your tweet was wrong in any way. I just wondered.
No, I didn't take it that way.
When you said it, like whatever you said just a little while ago, it just made me think, and I wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I think is we need to take Murphy's Law and call it Heupel's Law, because this season it just feels like what can go wrong does go wrong. And Kyle, I agree 100%. It seems that just our ability to impose our will on our opponent, it seems like when we have great momentum, we're throttling on offense. But once we make a mistake on defense, it seems the offense sometimes struggles as well just to get it done. Those key downs, it's like, who do you go to? I know on the offensive side of the ball, we feel very comfortable with Dylan Gabriel. He has a couple good receivers, but defensively, we're missing that Nate Evans, Bam Moore, Tay Gowan's out this year. Who's that guy on the defense do you see that has the capability to make those plays?
I'm not sure. I mean, Richie Grant is a guy, but I don't really know. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. You would think it would be Tunier there in the middle. I still don't even understand our defensive philosophy, to be quite honest with you, other than, try to create pressure, try to use our athleticism because of our lack of size at times. But I don't know. Recruit better across the front is my answer to that. I don't know that one individual. Nobody really sticks out to me as kind of that go-to leader. But there's guys that are young and talented. I think, we can continue to get better, but it's just very frustrating, because when you have an offense that puts up that many yards, it's like you should never, ever, ever, ever lose that football game, ever.
I agree with that, Kyle. One of the things, since we're talking about more senior or leaders within the defense, that should be your middle linebacker, Eric Gilliard, and he was out for this particular game. So Eric Mitchell hasn't done that as of late, and we were all, I think, expecting more. As to senior leaders, just to comment on that and momentum. I think when we were getting ready to step on their throats and we were at the 4-yard line and Otis Anderson gets a direct snap to him and then he fumbles the ball, you as a senior, you've got to make those plays. And at the end of the day, he has a penchant. I mean, he does way more good than bad, but he has a penchant, whether it be fumbling a punt or doing whatever, where it's kind of like every time I cringe now when he's touching the ball, and those seniors are the ones that have to carry you through. And I think that is a challenge out there. But to your point, I mean, I don't think we have established anybody as a senior leader. You've got Richie Grant that's been saying that he's a senior leader, but Richie is not an outspoken dude. So I don't know who else you would look towards outside of. But defensively, I don't know if there's anybody there that we could point to. Do you see anybody that you think should or could pick up that mantle?
Well, no, not really. I mean, Kenny Tunier has been a guy that kind of circulates in that realm as far as wanting to be a vocal leader, at least. And, so no. I mean, there's nobody that really comes to mind right now. I think that, defensive. No, that's a very challenging question because you don't really see that, and it kind of matriculates or percolates throughout the team. Like when we're up 14 points, and Memphis goes down and scores. Obviously, I know that fumble probably cost us the game. On the 1 yard line with Otis, and I know that feeling because for the first time this summer, I went back and watched UCF Texas from 2007 and literally had forgotten that I threw a pick six in that game. So I know. Is
that the first time you've gone back and watched that, or have you gone back and watched it before that?
No, that was the first time that I had ever watched that game.
Really?
Yeah, it was this summer. And the reason I did is because I watched it with my little brother. He had never seen me play, and so I thought it would be cool. And he gave me a bit of a hard time, to be honest with you. But I know like that feeling of just like, like if I didn't do this or this, we'd probably win that game. And so I don't want to come down hard on Otis, but you've got to protect the football in those scenarios, and especially on the goal line. And I don't even think he was really hit on the football. It was like, I think he got hit around the waist and the ball kind of squirted out. But that's the difference in the football game. I mean, that simply is the difference in the football game at that point in time. I think you put the game away with that. And, so that to see that from him, who I know is probably feeling really, really bad about that. And so it is what it is. But you just can't make those types of mistakes. And you could say the same thing for Memphis's running back who fumbled on the 1 yard line on the first play of the game. Like that could have changed the whole momentum of the football game for them. Even though they ultimately won, that was a really big setback and I think blow for Memphis early on. But those are two really, really, really critical swinging moments in the game. And, everybody knows that when you kind of go into that wildcat formation, like you're running the football and you've got to protect it. And it was interesting, you saw on another drive in that game that they brought Greg McCrae in for Otis, and Otis was kind of trying to wave him off like, no, I want to stay in. And they ultimately brought him out, and Greg was able to get in, and ran really hard to do so. But again, it's just like we know that we can score so fast that we lose like a team level of intensity. And it was almost like when I played, like our defense knew that there were going to be games that we may struggle offensively. We weren't a type of team that was going to go out and put 40 or 50 points up every game. And so they brought it. Like they were ready to go every single game. And I think that our defense just – if we can play this complementary style where, we're not giving up these big chunk plays and we're not letting drives go 80 and 90 yards down the field, I mean, we would be okay. But it's hard to wrap your head around where you point a finger because there was so much positive to take away from that game. And frankly, up until the last 3 or 4 minutes, did you guys feel – I'll ask you guys this question. Did you guys feel up 14 points that we could lose that game? Because I kind of felt like there was a chance we could, and that's shocking to feel that way.
I was hoping that they wouldn't, that they weren't going to come back when we were. I was hoping that we could hold them, and I don't know why I hoped that because we hadn't held them all game really. So
in the second half, at least.
Yeah, and I felt confident. Oh yeah, we got this. In fact, I said that at one point to somebody, and then it changed before my eyes. And I probably shouldn't have said that. It was a little bit of a jinx, probably, the way I look at things. But a couple things here real quick. We won't take a ton more of your time, but I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Otis Anderson and Greg McCrae in there a couple times. What is your opinion on running back by committee? I don't personally like it. I honestly wish that he would pick a starting running back and go with it. I think Greg McCrae is the guy, too, personally. I'm sorry, Otis Anderson. I'm sorry, D. Anderson. But, Greg just, he has something that that Otis does not as a running back. And I know he hasn't been fully healthy, but when he is fully healthy, yesterday he averaged 4.6 compared to, and it's a little bit more than Otis Anderson's 3.9. But on he had one less carry. Greg McCray had one less carry and had 80 yards, and he scored a touchdown. But I don't know. It's one of the things about this offense, and I know we have a ton of talent, blah, 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 but I would really love it if they just picked a running back, and I've always been on the Greg McCray train, and I just think I love to watch him run. He's such a... He thinks about it. I mean, he's a cerebral runner, he's patient. We saw him the one year his sophomore year where he had 1,000 yards or more. And I just don't understand why he's not just going with that.
Well, I think it's a good question. I mean, I talk to some of the individuals on the Nebraska staff still pretty regularly, and they speak so highly of Otis, and are basically always telling me, like, we don't find the ways to get Otis the ball. Like, running up the middle is not the way to use Otis Anderson. So I would agree with you. If our scheme is what it is, then Greg fits that style more. And you've got to be more creative with Otis. You do different things to get him involved in the passing game on a regular basis. You do things where you're handing it to him from a jet sweep perspective. But just handing the ball and running up the middle, Greg's better at that. But I think it takes us to this further point, which is when you look at these really good football teams across the country, they all have this bell cow. They all have this larger back. And we don't impose physical will on people. We don't, that is what we don't have. If we had a back that was 5'11", 220, 6 foot, 218, like that guy, along with the skill set that we have at the wide receiver and certainly not under center, but at quarterback with Dylan, like, I think that's the big difference maker for us is, yes, Greg is good. Yes, Otis is talented. Yes, they can do different types of things. But when we need 3 or 4 yards, our running backs go down easy. Our running backs do not fall forward. And here and there, they'll make a play where they break some tackles and they scamper for 50 yards. Like we saw Otis do that versus Tulsa. But it's like when you need it, when you know you need it, can you get 2 or 3 yards? We don't have that back, and we don't have a back with that size. And I think we've got to find that through recruiting.
Right. One more thing I got here. 3 wide receivers with over 170 yards. I mean, that alone is the stat that jumps off the page at me. 3 wide receivers with over 170 yards, and we lose a game.
It's insane.
It is insane.
It's insane.
I mean, the offense was on freaking point, except for, like the Otis fumble, a couple other little things.
I think, and I'd have to go back to watch the game because generally, my Sundays are so busy that I don't recap the game one time before we do this podcast, and I kind of like it that way, but
I deleted it. I'm not watching it ever again. I usually do too, but I'm not doing it.
Like I did with the Texas game.
Yeah, I'm not watching this game.
I think we've got to be – we don't have the timely drives. We haven't seen – and last night you could call us getting into field goal range there at the end like a timely drive. Our offense needed to get into field goal range. We did that. If we catch that ball, we get even closer to a much easier field goal. Although 37 yards down the middle 40 yards down the middle should be a college kick that you can make. But there's points in a game where you need to definitely not have a quick 3 and out and chew up some clock. And that's like one of these little areas where we struggle is like there's points in these games where we've got to do something on this particular drive. And sometimes we're not able to do that. And again, like that's where there's got to be a better term for front runner. But when everything's good and there's not a lot of pressure, like our offense does incredible and just destroys people. But there's these 1 or 2 drives in a game where we really need to chew up some clock, or we really need a score, or we need to go down there and punch it down their throat on 8 or 9 plays. And that's not our makeup, but those are like the elements of football games that I think that we've got to improve on offense. It's incredible to put 780 yards on the board, but can you do it when you absolutely need to? I think we did on the last drive. I think there in the third and fourth quarter, there were a few drives that we should have or could have or needed to sustain and really would have put the game away. Otis's fumble being one of those. But that's part of it. We needed it then, and we didn't get it.
Absolutely. All right, Kyle, thank you so much, man. We greatly appreciate it, as always. And hopefully next week when we do this, we will have some much more positive things. Hopefully we'll have, the defense will go off again, and we'll have, 7 turnovers or something crazy like that to talk about, hopefully. And they hold them, they shut them out or something. I mean, I don't know. We need some positive stuff to talk about the defense. So,
well, I'll tell you this much really quickly. I mean, Tulane is a much better football team than their in-conference schedule says it is.
I know.
I don't think our fan base would get too excited, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it later in the show. But this is going to be another really tough football game because Tulane's going to come out and think that they can beat us. And, they were right there with SMU and some others. So this is a very big game for us. This is I think this game more than ever in Coach Heupel's career at UCF will really show us what we're made of and the type of leadership we both have from a coaching staff and from a player's perspective, because this is a huge game. Really is in this season and turning it around.
Yeah, and it could also probably tell us how the rest of the season is going to go as well.
It will.
Because
just that.
We haven't had 2 losses in a row in a long time, and we're about to, if they don't do it right this week, there could be 3. So that's not good. All right, man, thank you so much. We will talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, guys.
All right, always good to talk to Kyle Israel. I hate when we have to talk to him in a situation like this, obviously. But anyway, good to talk to him, and we'll look forward to talking to him next week. Roger, you've got something new here. You've got a new segment. What's it called? We may not do it every week, but this is something that you came up with for this week.
Yeah, it's Nitro's Deep Thought. And the idea behind this is when we have something, a question or a survey or something that we want to get our opinions on, or that I think we should get our opinions on, we'll call it Nitro's Deep Thought and throw it in there. So this week, we've all had conversations around the capacity at the Bounce House. And there was a post made by a person named Eric and I, that was on the dungeon. And I saw this and I thought it'd be a great conversation for us to have. So the question is, knowing what we know now, what would the limit, if you had the authority to change this, what would you place as the limit for the Bounce House capacity? So the options are maintain at 25%, bump it up to 50%, bump it to 75%, or just go all out full capacity for the stadium to start with. And then we'll follow that up with another quick question.
Okay, well, my opinion on this whole deal, and it's a little bit different than probably a lot of y'all's opinions. I think there's not a lot that we can do about this whole situation that we're in anyway. So you might as well, the governor has given it the ability to be 100%. Do it. Make the money we need to make. Sell as many tickets as you possibly can. Sell as many concessions as you possibly can. Sell as much beer as you possibly can, and make the money that the school needs to make, that the athletics needs to make. Have everybody sign a waiver. I don't care. Still do the temperatures. Still have social distancing. Still have everybody wear a mask. But open it up. Let people come if they want to come. That's just my opinion.
I think that's going to be important for the Cincinnati game, but I'm looking at a team that's 2-2 with Tulane. I think the save face should go 25% here next week, because you don't want to, what is the crowd going to be next week, Tuesday?
Yeah.
I mean, if the weather's, 2:00, if the weather's nice, I'm sure it'll be a decent turnout. Obviously, there's not as much, tailgating activity, but I don't think we're going to get to those sellout crowds we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah. Roger?
Yeah, for me this week, I'd go ahead and try to bump it up to 50. I like the idea of maintaining social distancing. We've got enough room to do that within the stadium at 50% or maybe even 75. I don't know the specifics there. But at the end of the day, the only reason that I say that, other than, people's health, is that what I don't want to have happen is last week we'd heard that there was a quote unquote super spreader event that stemmed from the student section at the game. So what I don't want to do is get to a point where they can point to something like that and say, okay, we're not going to have any fans now. So to me, bump it up to 50 to be safe, see how it goes, and then maybe 75. But that's my opinion on it. And then to follow that up, guys, what do you think the actual capacity is? As you mentioned, or is going to be, as you mentioned, the governor has opened up capacity, and I know Danny White wants to push that number. What do you think it's going to be in the next 1 and 2 games?
I don't know if they're going to make it any different than it already is. I mean, they have to deal with a lot of people in this thing. The governor is one thing, but then the city of Orlando and the county of Orange all have something to say about that. And if you work in Orlando or live in Orlando, I'm not going to get too political here, but the government of those two, city and county, are a little on the, how should we say, a little on the restrictive side of things. And then they're playing it safe, and I understand that. I work in Orange County. I do not live in Orange County. I live in Seminole County, and it's a little bit more relaxed up here. But I understand where they're coming from. I don't like it personally, but it is what it is. But I think that they're going to decide that more than Danny White's going to decide that. So I would say that it's probably going to be the same. If Danny White could get 50% out of it or 75%, I'm sure he will.
John?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think we need as much revenue as possible. It's a weird year that they have to be losing a lot of that concession, which is a big deal for UCF athletics at large. Next 2 games, though, we have Tulane and Temple. Not the biggest names, the biggest brands in college football. Tulane's kind of had a shaky season, good freshman quarterback. I'm sure you'll get into it a little bit. And then Temple, isn't what they used to be. So I could see it kind of going, let's keep it kind of a lower number, and then, ratchet it up. I know he's got that circle around that Cincinnati game because that's going to be a big one for UCF.
Yeah, hopefully that one, it's pushed up by that time. So, Roger, I think it may be time for your 5-alarm hot take of the week. And do you want to revisit the one from last week?
Well, I think I want to do this one, which was essentially a hot take, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, that I had at the half of our game against Memphis, and it didn't turn out so well. So my hot take was...
Did you post this on social media?
I did not.
That's probably good.
Yeah. No. I did not. And the reason for that was because I come here this week and I didn't want to expose that too early, but it worked out for me in the long run. So, but the hot take was that I believe that we would be ranked this week. And had we continued to play the way that we had been playing and won even in a comfortable 7 to 14 point spread, I do think that we would have jumped back in the rankings this week. So, I know that this week, both polls were out. However, we were getting votes in the coaches poll this week. So we still had 1 vote. So I do think we would jump back into it either this week or next, given the losses that happened. So that was my 5-alarm hot take that never was. So I was wrong on that one.
All right. Well, I guess we still have to do this poll position thing. We made this segment thinking we were going to be in the polls, so we might as well do it.
Welcome to this week's poll position.
All right. Well, Roger, where do we stand at this point?
Very low on the totem pole. This week we have the coaches poll. We do have one vote, so we're still hanging on by one vote. In the AP poll, we're not receiving any votes. The big question for me, given that that's kind of where we're at, we're not arguing about where we should be, because I don't think anybody could argue any different about us being in the top 25. Can we climb back into this thing by season's end now that we've had 2 losses? So what do you guys think about that?
Probably not.
I think it's going to be tough, but what's crazy is we hit that field goal, we find a way to win that game, I think we'd be right in the top 25.
If for some reason, some way, that if Cincinnati is ranked, when they come in here and we hand it to them like we should, they're going to be ranked pretty dang high. Although, now, next week, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the Mountain West, all those conferences are coming back into the fold. So we'll see even where Cincinnati gets ranked when those guys actually come in and start playing. So by that time that we play Cincinnati at home, we'll have to see where they're ranked. That could be our golden ticket, though, back into the top 25.
And what's interesting is this weekend you have number 9 Cincinnati against number 16 SMU, so that's going to get a little bit solved as far as the American goes. And also the Big Ten starting football this weekend, you have to imagine there's going to be some shakeup there, and some of the old-time bias of teams like Ohio State, Michigan, if one of those guys get thrown off, they're still going to get in the polls. So the teams that might beat them and might show some success in a crazy year might get a little more love than usual.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, how that all plays out. Roger, you got anything more on that?
No. I think that covers it. I mean, unfortunately, we're just not in the poll anymore, but at least we're hanging on with a single fingernail right in the coaches poll.
Absolutely. Better than none. Well, we have a chance. There is a chance. We just have to make it go. All right. Is there a hoops update or anything else?
Yeah, just a real quick couple of updates. Hoops is getting ever closer to the season. So one thing that was big news that happened while we were off the last week was Colin Smith actually announced that he is stepping away from basketball for medical reasons. That's a pretty big loss. He was a senior leader. He was expected to play a big role again this year. He was playing the 5 position for us, although he was a 4. The only 5 that we have that's tall enough or is a true 5 at this point that's played any significant time would be Avery Diggs. We had Doumbia as well, but that's going to be a pretty big loss. So questions are, how does this impact the team?
Well, I think it's going to impact the team, obviously, because he was a lot of what was going on there. He's a big part of the team. So they've got to find somebody to fill those shoes. It's going to be the same thing that the football team has had to do and obviously struggled a little bit with on the opt-outs. And there may be more opt-outs because they're able to opt out as well. So you never know how that could turn out. But hopefully they will figure it out. We got a little while till basketball starts, so thank goodness they have a little bit of time to figure that out.
Yep, and on top of that, one bit of good news to kind of counterbalance that is we did sign a 4-star guard, Darius Johnson from Virginia. He's ranked number 129 nationally and is as a player, and then is the number 21 guard in the entire nation. He's 6 foot even, 180 pounds, and plays very similar to B.J. Taylor. So excited to learn more about him. Next, speaking of recruiting, we also had a football recruit we needed to talk about. We had a JUCO cornerback commit to us, Travion Shadrick Harris, committed to UCF. He's a 6'2", 195-pound cornerback from Rockland, California. He went to Sierra Community College. We recruited him really for his size, although he had a lot of really solid interest from Fresno State, UC Davis, Oregon, TCU, South Carolina, ECU, and SMU were also in the mix. The challenge for him was he didn't do what he needed to do for grades, so he decided to go the JUCO route instead of the Division III offers that was being offered, but he seems to have really cleaned that up. Watching his tape, he's got great speed. He's definitely a ball hawk. He was all over the field with interceptions. He's very, very physical. He's a good size cornerback. That's very long for a cornerback, and he makes good use of his body. He needs to work on his brakes a little bit because when he turns his hips, that's a little awkward for him, but he can make up for it with the speed that he displayed. He did great bumping people on off the line, disrupting routes. And he's a super hard hitter and uses his size well on jump balls. So one other thing, just a quick note, he was on the preseason third team All-American team for JUCO in the country. So exciting that we have more recruiting going on, and there'll be some more coming down the pipe soon.
Yeah, this will be an interesting recruiting year with all of the COVID-19 differences as well. So it's obviously going to play into that as well. So, all right, we're going to take a little bit of a break here, and when we get back, we open the Ask Knightline inbox. Next on Knightline 240. All right, we'll be right back. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Knightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong. Spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated. Because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network.
Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com. Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Bar Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Bar Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Bar Law today. All right, time again for Ask Knightline, where we're answering your questions that you posted on Facebook or Twitter at hashtag Ask Knightline. Quite a few of them this week, and some good questions, really good questions. Selena, it's at UCF Selena, asks, imagine a phone call between Matt Prater and Orbowski. What advice would Prater give him?
Well, if I were Matt Prater, I'd be telling him all about the fact that I missed an important kick, but I'm in the NFL and I have been for the past 35 years and I'm making a lot of money. So don't focus on the one kick. But at the end of the day, I think he just tells him to keep practicing, keep making sure that he's focused on what he's doing. And Matt Prater had some interesting comments recently in saying that he got more coaching in the NFL for his kicking than he did when he was at UCF. So whatever technical share I think would be there. But basically, it's going to happen. Just make sure you keep your head up, kid, and keep charging on.
Okay, another one from this one's. I've never heard this name, never seen this name before. I believe that it's Worry, Worry, Worry. It's WRY3 on Twitter. This person says, very concerning that discipline is still not there. Does the coaching staff not address these errors with the players? It really seems like if it's not one thing with the team, it's another. I think that they do address these things. We saw the differences with the penalties this week, especially the pre-snap penalties, and those were big time different. So I think that they do. They probably need to a little bit more. I think Josh Heupel is a player's coach, and I don't think he wants to make them hate him like a lot of the other coaches do or did in my time, especially. I hated my head coach in college. I hated him. I was scared of him. We were all scared of him. We were scared what he was going to do to us. He was not our friend. I don't think that that's the way you coach college football nowadays. And I think that there's probably some of those coaches still left out there, but their time is numbered, I think. So I think that's the issue. I think that they will, and I think that they do. So I think that we've answered that one fairly decent. Unless anybody else wants to add on there, we will keep going. Marquez 1621834 1621. No, wait. It's Marquise. I don't know. 16221-834. Ask the difference between 7-3, 6-4-ish, and 2-8. There's a big difference between 7-3 and 6-4. To be honest with you, I think it's obviously one more loss. I think we can wind up as the 7-3 pretty easily. 6-4, we could probably wind up there too. 2-8, I don't see that happening, and I hope to God that doesn't happen.
There's just way too much talent.
Yeah, and I don't think that these guys are going to give up, like we said before.
We have the number one offense in the country. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, unless they give up. That would be the only way that happens. We're going to score a lot of points still, so I'm not too horribly worried about that. Okay, CA Crush, at CA Crush, and he had Orange Crush cans as his picture on Twitter. How worried or happy will we be if the one-time transfer rule is changed by the NCAA given the current state of the team? I guess there's discussion still about this one-time transfer rule. I don't know really how it applies to the team. I guess, we could get some transfers in and some people could go. I mean, either way, it could help you or hurt you, I guess. Roger?
I think you're right on your assessment of it. But at the end of the day, I think, people were worried about that before. And when they had the waiver process, and it just hasn't materialized. If anything, most G5s, and especially us, have gained, and we haven't had a lot of people be pulled away. The only exception that I can think of is Temple losing their stud linebacker and Houston losing Derek King. But that was a weird situation to begin with down there. So outside of that, it's only benefited us. So I don't see that really as a problem for us, just because we're a successful program that has a lot to play for. If you were playing for like a MAC team and you needed exposure and you weren't playing on ABC 3 weekends in a row, then yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah. All right. This next one comes from UCF MSU Clemson. We've had questions from this guy before. I appreciate the question, but I don't like this question. And I replied to it. I normally try not to reply to these, but here's the question. How long until Dylan enters the portal, the transfer portal? And I said, ain't going to happen. I think that Dylan is a complete, has UCF in his blood. I mean, there's no way that happens. Unless something crazy happens, maybe if the coach goes away or something like that, which isn't going to happen either. That would be the only way that I would see Dylan Gabriel checking out of UCF. Maybe if Heupel goes away. Maybe if the entire staff goes away and they wanted to go a different direction. I just don't see that happening. So thank you for your question. But that's my answer on that one. A little, I just don't think it's going to happen. Brian W. Peterson, we've had him quite a bit on here. Do you see the team rebounding or falling apart after the L last night, and then have the coaches lost the locker room? Roger?
Wow. You're throwing me the curveballs.
Or John. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Personally, I'm going to answer the first one this way. I'll say that I do see them rebounding. I don't see them falling apart. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be for lack of trying, but I don't think they're going to lose. So that's number one. Number two, have the coaches lost the locker room? We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. I don't think they quote unquote have lost the locker room. I don't think Heupel has set the right balance for the locker room. I think part of that is his comfort level with being a player's coach. But again, remember, he didn't get to transition into his style right away. He had, the Frost way of doing things, and I think he's kind of adopted that and molded that into the way he's doing that. And he hasn't figured out how much of the discipline that he has to sprinkle in there to make it work. So my opinion, I think it's more of that than anything else than actually losing the locker room.
Yeah. I don't think that he's lost the locker room. I just think that, there's been some issues. I think they're working on the issues. And I think that you're either going to see it. It's either going to go one way or the other, and we'll know pretty quickly.
And the wheels haven't fallen off, guys. I mean, The reality is there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of positives. There's a lot of talent on this team. There's definitely some issues, but this isn't, an 0-4 team.
Absolutely not. Yeah. There's a lot of time as well to get things together. So, Black and Gold Ed or ED, not sure which one this is. Black Gold ED. Ed or ED, not sure. What's Danny White's?
That could be taken many different ways. I'm going to go with education.
Yeah, well,
Tiger's not a sponsor.
Hopefully that's what we're talking about there. Education, Ed. Okay, or the guy's name is Ed. That's what I was thinking. I was not thinking anything else. Come on now. Keep it clean, folks. All right, anyway, Ed's question was, what's Danny White's take on the losses and dropping out of the national conversation? Par for the college football course, as Libs 407 sees it, or privately mad as hell, like many of the fan base sees it. I would say, and I don't know this, but I'm gonna assume that he's mad, but I'm gonna assume as well that he knows that this is college football. He's been around college sports all of his life. His family he's huge in the AD world. And in college sports, in general world. He was a player. His dad is an AD. His brother was a player and is now a coach. So I think he probably sees it, it's sports. Sports, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'm sure he probably is a little bit upset about it, too. I mean, everybody is. We all are. Anybody else?
I think part of it is just a missed opportunity, right? I mean, I don't think he's like stark raving mad, angry, but I do think he's probably frustrated, as the rest of us are, because it's a missed opportunity for branding, especially in such a sensitive year. And the fact that, in some ways you can make an argument that we had a path to the playoff. And if we were going to do it, this year would be the year to do it. So I think he's frustrated, but I don't think that he's like angry to the point that there's vitriol or anything like that.
Yeah, he's been aggressive and stuck his neck out. Obviously he wants to capture and seize the moment. Nothing would make his job easier than, UCF winning every single game from here until he rides off to the sunset. But this is life, and I think he's obviously where he's at for a reason and understands that this is part of life, part of growing, and, not always growth is 100% up exponentially. There's some bumps in the way, and I think Danny White's a guy that understands that.
After all, it is 2020. All right. Thank you for your questions, everybody. We really enjoy them. One of my best, one of my favorite segments of the show, as I've always said. Keep them coming. I appreciate all of them. Good job. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports. All right, we're going to kind of throw this whole news and notes thing together because I really did not do my homework like I should have probably on a lot of this stuff. So we're going to kind of go through carefully. Brashad Perryman did play today against Miami. 4 catches, 8 targets, no touchdowns, 62 yards. So that's good. Go ahead there, Roger, with something.
Speaking of the NFL, Jordan Franks was signed last week to the Browns. So I'm sorry that you had to go to Cleveland. I'm a Bengals fan. There's whole videos about how terrible Cleveland is, but congratulations on being signed back to the NFL.
All right. Let's see here. Traquan Smith. This is a couple days back, but 2 receptions for 8 yards. He didn't have a very big game the other night there. Missed a couple and fell down one time. Now, you were saying that was Hughes in the game today and went out there, John?
Yeah, I saw it go across the scroller that he left with a neck injury. So hopefully everything's good there.
Again?
Very injury-prone, Mike Hughes, unfortunately. The stats from that was 1 tackle, so it must have been after his 1 tackle. Tristan Hill, unfortunately, he's gone for the season, ACL. That's a bummer because he finally got his chance there in Dallas. Dallas is not having good luck this year with guys going out.
Well, you have to wonder, too, if that was a retaliation for that Gator roll he did the previous week.
Yeah.
I didn't see the actual injury, but there were a lot of people that were fired up about that.
Oh, yeah.
Seattle would call that karma, I think. That's very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, very unfortunate. All right, also Blake Bortles. Sounds like he's not with the Broncos anymore, which is
no, the boat is no longer afloat.
Yeah, so hopefully there's other places that he could go, though. Dallas needs a quarterback. Backup probably now. Washington probably needs somebody and all that. So Matt Prater, 4 extra points made, 2 field goals, 3 field goals attempt. So he missed 1 somewhere in there. Jordan Akins, I don't think that he played. He has a concussion. Gabe Davis plays tomorrow night against my Chiefs. That will be interesting. So, anything else there, Roger?
Just a couple things to mention. Zay Franks, if you remember, we had talked about him a while back on his commitment to UCF. He had a little bit of a twist in his story where he decommitted from UCF. It turns out there are some family issues involved with that, but he is back on board. So for those of you that don't remember, he hails from Mississippi and was a 3-star recruit. So excited to have him back. And then lastly, the Orange Bowl Classic was canceled. So we've been talking about this, and a week or so ago I told you that it was still on, which it was at that time, but it has subsequently been canceled. And instead, we will be playing in Tallahassee against FSU. So we won't have the entire group of people to play against. However, we will be playing FSU in Tallahassee.
All righty. John, thank you very much for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. I know it can be a very long process. You've seen now how long it takes to do this. We've been sitting here since 7 o'clock. It is now 10:12. So to get a 2-hour show for you guys, it takes a little bit longer for us. So thank you very much for sticking in with us. This has been Knightline 240. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Onto the field, with our spirits we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry, BSET.